Hello, MGTOW. Hello, men. This is Howard Dare. Thanks for stopping by. So, I want to talk about 7 reasons why women think they are in charge. But first, let me say thank you to everybody who's been stopping by, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, even donating. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and click on the subscribe button, click on the bell symbol next to it, and accept the email notifications. It'll help me grow my channel, and I would really appreciate it. Now, let's talk about 7 reasons why women think they are in charge. Number 7, men hate to disagree with a woman. Men will agree with a woman on almost anything. And if she's an attractive woman, they'll not only agree with her, they will support her. They will like get behind, whatever ideas she's putting forward. So if a woman steps up and says, yeah, I think we should put cows on the moon, right? She's good looking. The man's going to be like, that's brilliant. That's going to make us millions of dollars. We need to produce this idea. We need to develop this idea. You are a business genius, right? And it doesn't matter what it is. It's like a little kid, you know what I mean, coming home with their stick drawings and the parents saying, wow, this is great, and putting it on the refrigerator. This is how women are treated their whole life, okay? I remember driving down the freeway once and seeing a woman in a big giant pickup truck with a flat tire. And she was standing outside of her truck and she was just crying, right? Because the differential in size, you could tell she didn't even know where the jack was. And I thought to myself, well, she's doing pretty good because at least she's communicating to people that she needs help, right? Like a lot of women would just be sitting in the truck and continuing to cry. So anything they do, the men are looking at it and saying, well, that's actually pretty smart. So there you go. Moving on. Number 6. If a woman can figure out what a man wants, and this is not hard to do, and then she can withhold it from him. If the man thinks that the most important thing in life is getting together with a woman and having children, if a man thinks to himself that women are the most important thing in the world, she is effectively in charge. She's in charge of the man, right? What does it matter what somebody is in charge of if they're not in charge of you? And what does it matter what they are in charge of if they are in charge of you? So if you're a man and buy into that typical line that women are the greatest thing in the world and you love women and your entire self-image, your validation comes from women, that's the measure of what kind of a man you are, well then she is in charge, isn't she? She's in charge of all the important parts of the man's personality. So he's given over complete power to her. Okay, so you understand that. Okay, moving on. Number 5. This is an extension of the previous one. Because here's the thing. Even if the man has built the world, okay? Even if he maintains all of the things in the world, even if the future development and advancement depends upon the man and his ability, if the woman can control the man, you can understand why she would start to think that she actually did all of this work, right? When I was a very, very little boy, there was a bridge that I could see from my window, the living room, okay, every night. And in case you haven't seen it, it's quite beautiful to see a bridge when the lights turn on at night, because it lights up across the expanse and, you couldn't see it before and now you can see it. So it's really remarkable to see. And I had gotten it into my head, because I was only about 1 or 2 years old, that I was in fact the one turning on the lights. Right. And I think it had to do with the fact that when the lights turned on, everybody, probably smiled and looked and said, ooh, that's nice. Right. And I obviously caught on to that. That's where the attention was going. And I recognized it was happening at around the same time every night. So I just started taking credit for it. Right? So it's like everybody would go, ooh, beautiful. And I would say, yeah, I did that. That was me. And I'd say, oh, very impressive. Perhaps I was just joking at first, but eventually I actually started to believe that I was the one turning on the lights. So eventually the family would gather and it would be like, well, it's time for Howard to turn on the lights. And it's like, go ahead, Howard, turn them on. And I'd be like, okay, I'm turning them on now. And nothing would happen. And I would say, no, not now. Just give me a little bit more time. Eventually, I would get it right. that I would, say it and they would turn on, and everybody would applaud. And I think that's what we do with the women, right? So, and I think that that's the idea that they get into their head, that because they can, in fact, order the men around, even though it's the men who built everything, they just start naturally taking credit for it, right? Okay, now, moving on. Number 4. The number 4 reason why women think they are in charge is because no matter what's happening, the woman can throw everything into emotional disarray and confusion, general disarray and confusion. And this is a workable tactic, okay? If you don't have a good move, if you can't strengthen your weakest position, if it looks like you're about to lose the game, I'm talking about chess, but I'm talking about life too. One of the things you can do is just throw everything into complete confusion. You can put out a useless check. You can check their king. You can cause all kinds of trouble. This will disrupt the current situation and the path that it is on. This is what women do. This is the emotional manipulation of women. In other words, the man is very focused. He's very concentrated. He's going to be successful. So the woman comes and says, your best friend, he was hitting on me the other night. Maybe that doesn't work. Maybe he says, my best friend is on the other side of the world, right? So maybe it was your best friend. So we see this tactic, women emotionally trying to manipulate men until the man loses his emotional stability. And then he's on the level with the woman. So you could be Einstein coming up with the theory of relativity, and she could want you to go to the store to buy something. She doesn't have to outsmart you. All she has to do is disrupt whatever it is you're doing enough so that you will become frustrated and give up what you are doing. Then you are in an emotional world where she can read feelings faster, she can respond, she's stronger emotionally. She can withhold her emotions, she can display her emotions, she can read your emotions, and she can manipulate them by her demonstrations. And the only thing that the man can do, okay, is he's very strong physically, and if he's not upset emotionally, he can concentrate, he can focus, if he's a good man. So, again, she's not in charge, but she's controlling the situation. Could you imagine how unsettling it must be to know that you are the least qualified person in the room, to know that you are the most trivial person in the room, and yet when you walk into the room, all the other people in the room stop what they're doing and turn and look at you. Right? Don't you see, the differential there? So a room full of Einsteins, all working. Woman with an IQ of 90 but extremely attractive walks into the room and giggles or drops her pencil. Every one of the Einsteins stops what he's doing, runs over, and tries to help her pick up the pencil. What is she going to think? She looks at them and she says, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, and I want you to do this other thing. They are pointless, useless, the most retarded things in the world. By doing those things, you will destroy the company. You will destroy the country. She's like, I want you to bring in men from other parts of world that don't share our values, and I want to use your tax dollars to give them free housing and free food and free computers. And the men are like, oh, you are just so compassionate. And it's like, nobody bothers to tell her, oh, you're going to starve your own children to virtue signal to complete strangers because, that's how much extra time you have. Anyway, you can understand why she would start to think that she was, in fact, running the whole show. Because for the weak men, and as far as, emotional manipulation goes, she is. Okay, you understand that. Moving on. The number 3 reason why women think they are in charge. As a civilization becomes more advanced, the values in the civilization start to turn. In other words, the initial way to build the civilization is through masculine values, through building, through defending, through gathering resources, through being very practical and pragmatic, and literally, adhering to these patriarchal principles. You call them patriarchal, right? You could just as well call them, the effective tactics to build a civilization. So after you've done that and you start to build up resources, you start to build up a dependent class of people. And this is great. because now you can take care of the children, you can take care of the elderly, people have some security, they can plan for the future, they can do all kinds of great things. They can advance, technology, science, art. But at the same time, you start getting more and more of these people that really can't do good jobs. Does that sound familiar? I mean, look at your colleges, right? They're just filled with women pursuing completely useless degrees. They're filled with young men that are just so misguided, that they're basically there to meet up with the women and go to, Antifa demonstrations. Because this is how susceptible the young mind is to these types of, liberal, emotional ideas. So we are at a stage in civilization where the values and the principles that built the civilization are being shunned. And the values and the principles of people who did not build the civilization, but who want the resources of the civilization, are becoming stronger. And you literally have the men becoming less masculine and the women becoming more masculine, right? Because if you'll think about it, when we say civilization, that's what we mean. When we say civilized, what we mean is less aggressive, less masculine, and more feminine. Or at least that's one way that you would interpret it. And that's how we are interpreting it. So there you go. Okay, moving on. Number 2 reason why women think they are in charge. Women are starting to believe their own marketing and emotional victim narrative. Women are starting to believe their own emotional story. Okay? They're starting to believe their own press, their own marketing. And this can happen. I remember when I was a little boy and I did some things that were not exactly perfect all the time. Like I stole the cookie from the cookie jar, okay? I did. I admit it, right? There were occasions where I stole the cookie from the cookie jar. And there were times where I got caught, okay? And naturally, without any sort of prompting, I lied about it at the time, because it was dangerous. So of course, it's like, hey, you're stealing a cookie from the cookie jar. And it's like, no, I'm putting a cookie back. Someone else had snuck in here earlier, taken a cookie from the jar, left it out. I was putting that cookie back. I should be rewarded. I should be rewarded with a cookie, as a matter of fact. Thank you. But they didn't fall for it, right? They just didn't fall for it, right? If I'd have been a pretty girl, they might have. So I got punished, right? And I was sent to my room without a cookie. And I bemoaned the injustice of my false prosecution, my false imprisonment. And I kept presenting my emotional, case that I didn't steal the cookie. And at some point, I started to actually believe it because I was putting on an act. You know what I mean? I was bemoaning the injustice of the act of me being imprisoned in my room. Right, as a child, and for stealing a cookie. And I went too far. I started to believe what I was emotionally peddling. And before you know it, I'm in the room and I'm angry. I'm upset. I am preoccupied with, this issue. And it was very difficult for me to remind myself that, oh yeah, that's right. You're lying. You were, in fact, trying to steal the cookie. And all of this upheaval, all of this breathing, all of this crying, all of this emotional turmoil, it was just an act to get out of admitting that I was trying to steal the cookie. And I literally believed it. You know what I mean? I was being tossed around emotionally. I was only 7 or 8 years old at the most. And I thought, this is remarkable. I've actually started to believe my own bullshit. So there you go. That's another one of the reasons why women think they are in charge. Okay, so here we go with the number 1 reason why women think they are in charge. Here's the thing. Even though the men build everything and maintain everything, even though the men have invented all of the sciences, have done all of the exploring, all of the building. Women are chameleons. Recently, women have suggested that they should be paid as much as male athletes, right? They don't get 1/10 of the attendance. Their skills are just gifted high school male athletes can beat professional female athletes. Maybe not your top ones, but the majority of them, oh yeah, quite easily. So female athletes do not deserve anywhere near what a male athlete does. To watch a woman, athletically, it's like, what a waste of time. But to watch a man athletically when he's at the top of his game, it is poetry in motion. So even though all of these things are true, women and children are first. If the ship is sinking, we're saving the women and children. If we're under attack, we're circling the wagons. And in the middle of that circle are the women and the children. And if the herd out on the African Serengeti is being attacked, they circle, and in the center of that circle are the women and the children. And even though it's the males in the herd that, go out and explore and find new territory and new food, it is the women and the children that are valued. And you understand the reason for this, right? Because the women can reproduce, and you can rebuild the tribe. You can reconstitute the herd if you have 10 women and 1 male. But if you have 1 woman and 10 males, well, you can't repopulate anything. So from a biological nature point of view, the women are valuable. The men are built to protect and to defend. That was part of the trade-off. The females would, reproduce, and the men would use their physical abilities to protect and guard and provide during these difficult times. So even though the men build everything and maintain everything, they do it for the women, to protect the women. And even though she can't build or maintain as well as a man, and even though she's not as smart or adroit as a man, and even though she's not as strong or can't fight as well as a man, she is more loved and she is more valued than a man. And therefore, in her mind, she's in charge. How could it not be? Everything revolves around her and her interests and her needs and her wants. Whenever women accomplish anything, we praise them. It's like, oh my God, she's a successful female author? That's amazing. Madame Curie was successful, doing some work in science. That's amazing. In the woman's mind, she is in charge because everything around revolves around her. And if you're a man and your main preoccupation in life is getting together with women and pleasing women, then in your life, she is in charge. In your mind, she is in charge. And all it takes is for one woman to realize that this is the way the man is thinking. And she then takes charge of the man. She uses him until there is nothing more, and then she discards him. And the man wants this to happen. You know this is true, that many of the men find their meaning by a woman coming and saying, I will tell you what to do now. That this is, in fact, his natural place. So I hope you understand that the women are not in charge, but the men are handing over control to the women, and that many individual men give control over to the women. The mother raised him, so that's where his focus is. He doesn't have to compete in a man's world. He was raised in a woman's world where things were easy and given and people were taken care of. So he doesn't have these male, masculine, patriarchal values. And those values are shunned and ridiculed. So even though the women can't do the work of the man, even though she cannot maintain the systems, even though throughout history she has not created and built the systems, within an advanced technological society, her wants, her needs, her desires, her concerns, her emotional fits rule the day. This is why Angela Merkel can bring it, this is why we institute unworkable, unsustainable political social programs to appease the women, in conflict with the very masculine values to sustain and maintain the present and to build and create the future. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that for now. I hope you found this useful. And please like, share, comment, subscribe, donate, and join me again, Howard Dare, as I plan to have more content for you. Thank you, MGTOW.